This is a Geek Leader. Hey, Geek Leaders, welcome to episode 133 of the podcast. And today on the show, I've got Sidar Ok. He is an executive coach, independent management consultant and the founder of IQoach. And he's helped dozens of professionals become their own boss, to start freelancing. And in this marketplace, it's really hard to hire helps. So a lot of people are going out and, getting freelancers and getting people to work part-time. And it's a great side, gig if that's something you're interested in. So before we kick it off with Sidar, I want to thank our sponsors, Splashtop. Splashtop, is a great product. I've been using them both professionally and personally for over 7 years. And if you are an MSP or IT professional managing computers anywhere in the world, you can use Splashtop remote support to instantly, securely access and manage your Windows, Mac, Linux, and even Android computers. And the best part is there's no additional cost if you want to use your mobile device. You can do it. You can use an iPad. You can use your MacBook. You can use a Windows desktop. It does not matter. You can use any device to connect in and remotely manage these computers. You can even create users and groups for different permissions, and we use that at our office. We have different groups with different users with access to certain computers and not to other computers. You can set up remote sessions, including multi-monitoring viewing. You can do file transfers just by dragging and dropping. You can do session recording, chat with the end user, remote print. You can also access an attended machine on demand with no prior installation. It works great as a backup access to your managed devices. Splashtop also offers an option for lightweight RMM in its remote management premium license if you get into that. Also, you can configure alerts, manage updates, schedule actions, view logs, and perform remote commands, and so on. Splashtop integrates seamlessly with RMMs and ITSM solutions so that you can launch your remote sessions from within any of your existing platforms. You can also increase revenue by reselling remote access to your end users. You can create free user accounts in Splashtop remote support and then enable your end users to access their computers. MSPs have saved 70 to 80% after switching to Splashtop remote support from LogMeIn or other remote access softwares. So head on over to ageekleader.com/splashtop to get 20% off your first year. Again, ageekleader.com/splashtop.
Thanks for inviting me, John. It's a pleasure.
So if you don't mind telling the audience, just to set some context for the conversation, how did you get to where you're at in your career? What was the path in your journey like, and what are you doing now?
Yeah. So I started my career actually not as a voluntary thing that a lot of people would also start. I grew up in southeast of Turkey. I came from a war zone. And as you know, that area is currently also still not stable with the Syrian border and refugees. So at the age of 17, I was able to get out and study for the college in the Turkish side, and I managed to get into computer science. And that was the first time I have ever seen a computer. So till that time, I didn't even know what a computer was. And after getting to the computer science, I have started to learn about computers, and at many times I wanted to quit as well, of course, because I didn't understand anything. And a lot of the people who were coming from the Turkish side of Turkey rather than Kurdistan were very well versed and they knew everything. And then compulsory military duty has come when I finished the college. And I was recruited by Microsoft, so I went to work for Microsoft in the United States, in Seattle. And then I worked about like a year and a half, and then I wanted to be closer to my family, and I came to Europe. I worked in Ireland, and then I worked in Belgium. So during those years, I always kept very good relationship with my existing employers or previous employers. And Microsoft, I kept them as a client after I have stopped working for them. So that helped me, of course, a lot, like moving to an independence. And after Ireland, when trying to come to Belgium, like all these steps I have made, I have jumped none of the steps. So I started as a senior I started as a junior developer, then I became a senior developer, then a team lead, and then I become an architect, and then I started to manage some projects. I became a project manager, and then I became a program manager. And becoming an independent, I have helped with the companies with their digital transformation programs. So I have become an advisor to the Belgian government and also to Microsoft. I have helped with their strategy for SharePoint 2013 product. And I started to coach people in the IT space to become better leaders and add more value to the organization via entrepreneurship. And my coaches are working now in no less than Amazon, Google, and a lot of other Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, so this is my story in a nutshell. Yeah, and again, thanks to you to give me this chance to express myself.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about. You said you first saw your computer at 17, and a lot of our listeners, I've talked to many people, and they grew up kind of with computers or got their first computer, in elementary school. What was it like that first time you saw a computer do something? Was it like magic, or what was that experience?
Yeah, like nowadays, indeed, it is like it's very hard to imagine a world without them existed ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have the similar feeling. I get that because I'm very bad at finding roads by myself, and even though I have lived through that times, I'm always every day telling to myself like, what was I doing before GPS?
Yeah,
Like,
me too. I get lost all the time. Like if it wasn't for
yeah,
GPS and a map, and I wouldn't know where I was
yeah.
going.
Yeah, exactly. So even with the GPS, I managed to get lost. And before that, it's like just empty space on my mind, like just didn't exist. I probably voluntarily wanted to delete that section of my brain that suffered a lot from getting lost around, etc. So yeah, I completely get that. But indeed, there was a period that people didn't have computers in every house, or so we didn't have mobile phones. And I was living in a particularly poor area of Turkey. And when I saw the first computer in the computer science class, by the way, like you can tell, like, why the hell did you go to computer science to study computer science if you have ever seen a computer, right?
Yeah, that's a
So,
good question.
well, so I was like, I'm practically an Asian family, like Middle East is still in Asia. And like all Asian families, you have pretty much like one choice or two choices to go and study something in life. It's either you have to become a doctor if you have good mathematical and like biology skills, whatever, or you have to go and study. If you have verbal skills, you have to be a lawyer, right? Because there are a lot of injustices around, and people want their rights to be protected. So there are only the two ways, and I hated to the guts, like for both of them. And yeah, I just told you that like I'm not able to even find my way through like with GPS, and I cannot imagine the lives that I would destroy if I was a surgeon, for instance. Like,
Oh
or
man, yeah.
yeah,
There's a
that
lot
would,
more risk there when it comes to like operating on someone versus running a little bit of software or coaching someone.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I always tell my
yeah,
team. No one's gonna die if we mess up, so let's not be afraid, to move forward. However, I guess if we were writing software for airplanes, that may be a different story.
yeah, and like even those kind of jobs I would not want to do. I mean, like there was a part of my life that I was a very specialized person. Like I was working for Microsoft with the Visual Studio 2005's the menu items. Like you go and you just dig deeper into something, but it's not like life threatening, right? Still, it's not like real time. On the other hand, I always knew that I was more of a generalist, and it is hard to have a generalist uh, profile when you are studying medicine, etc. Even the general practitioners are too much specialized for me. And yeah, like when I've seen the computer first time, because of that, I was like, man, this is not real. This is surreal. I see, like my friends were showing me that, okay, this is mouse and this is the pointer. So if you move the mouse, the pointer will move. And I didn't get it. I was like, like if I want the pointer to move, I just touch the pointer and drag and drop it. Why would I move the mouse? Why would I, like, my mind was like, like you have to physically still interact with with the things rather than using an external peripheral. And when I have seen they were able to move the mouse from one part of the screen to the other, I was like, okay, that's it. I will never be able to become a computer engineer, you know. And then I phoned my father and I said that I'm not going to become an engineer, so I will go and study for the exam for 1 year and then I will be a doctor, like you said. And he said, shut up. I am not coming and taking for you. You have decided that and you have to finish it. He just left me all alone. And
But look at where you
yeah,
are now, so that worked out pretty well.
yeah, I have, it has taken a lot of begging to the people who know better than me to help me with my homeworks and stuff. And yeah, I really hustled my way through it, even within the college, because I also didn't have, I didn't have a lot of money to pay for the college. And I had to work, but at the same time, I didn't know a lot about programming, so I couldn't do the work that would be useful for my studies. And all my friends, etc., they were working in similar parts, etc., for cheap, but for good money for students. And I was doing like things like theater, or promotional material selling. I was like a clown a lot of times. I was I was doing like this promotional stuff, sausage man, etc. So yeah, yeah, I cannot say that they helped a lot in my career, but they helped to pay for the college. And and yeah, that turned out well because the I wanted to get out of it so much that I found like an editorial writing job for Microsoft's website, and I was able to then start some to write some technical articles, and that's how I got better at the programming and coding part of things. But at the same time, the people skills, right? You learn how to present to people. You become a presenter, and then you travel the company, you do events, etc. And I really liked it as a student as well. Like I was not able to afford to get on a plane by myself, but Microsoft was paying for everything. So and I had a good job as well. And when I finished it, my job was like nearly ready. They fixed me an interview with a good team, and I was off to go. So that worked out well in the end, but it didn't start as ideal as it could ever be.
Yeah, I found that that's often the case with people that I interview, that they don't start out with where they end up, and just I think people get discouraged sometimes where they look at the end product of someone else and say, I wish I had that, and they don't realize that there's a process to get there. And I think you really illustrated that pretty well when you talked about the fact that you went from a junior position to a senior position to an architect to project manager to program manager, and you kind of went through the steps. How important is it for a leader to go through those steps?
Ah, yeah, that's a great question. Like there are two school of thoughts, right? Like also we have the similar school of thoughts for coaching as well. Like to become a good leader in a field, such experience needed as technical field, do you have to have the background that you are expecting from the other people, or do you have to have an outsider's point of view? So the two school of thoughts like have been fighting with each other. We are seeing a lot of CEOs and even CTOs with not a lot of technical background or experience. They come and manage big teams, and sometimes they are successful. Um, and we cannot expect really all of them to be all the time like super good involved with the technical solutions. But I would say that if I had to go select a CEO for my small to mid-sized technical company, I would choose the technical background CEO any day over like a generic management CEO, because like the business is something that you learn on the way. And if you have the extra skills as a businessman and a technical person, all the better, right? Like a good example is like Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates used to be still involved with the technology still like the middle of 2000s, right? There was a saying that he knew every code that was ever written in Windows, till like Windows 98 or Windows XP. It's crazy, like if you come to think about it. And this guy is still like going through IPOs, and they threw uh, birthday cakes on his face, etc. These are all the while keeping up with the code base of Windows and Office. Same way, but in my opinion, if you have gone through the steps, you have a better chance of understanding what's going on behind the scenes. You don't have to know everything, but coming from there gives you a distinct advantage.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think, yeah, you can lead in other areas, no doubt. But if you have experience in that area, it'll be easier, right? You'll have something to fall back on. Whereas if they took me and said, "Hey, I want you to lead an accounting group," well, I don't know anything about accounting, so it'll be harder for me to do that. But I'd have to work, to learn the industry, work to learn information. I would still be able to manage the people, but to manage the process would take a lot more work than if you said, "Hey, I want you to manage these mobile developers," because I've done that. It's easier. I understand it. I don't
Indeed.
have to go and learn as much.
Yeah, indeed. And there is this illusion in some of the people. They like for example, when we are talking about project managers, right? Project managers tend to say that like we have managed projects, and I like the methodology applies to everything. I can manage construction projects, and I can manage pharmaceutical projects, etc. And that's correct. They can do that. But what they don't they ignore very conveniently, let's say, is every time that you manage a project and you become an expert at project management, you are already technical in project management, right? You cannot find, or you cannot be successful at the job if you don't know project management. So your technical skills over there that makes you successful is the project management. Now, there are some areas that you will never be a project manager, even if you have the project management skills. And we are seeing it even more and more every day. For IT, maybe it's easier to make those transitions, right? Like you have managed some software projects, and then maybe they might allow you to manage some infrastructure projects or cloud transitions, etc. It is more fluid, but it's very hard for an IT project manager to manage a pharmaceutical project or a clinical trial project, right? It requires specific expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the coming years, we are going to see that in IT as well, much more. It's already hard for the software management or like infrastructure related experts in becoming PMs to go to another level, and also on the technical level, right? Like we are software developers. It's very hard for us to get a job in network architecture. I mean, it's like becoming a doctor, so to say. But it is in the realm of possibility. But I wouldn't really recommend anybody to try to do that if they are not really passionate about the subject that they are going to go in. On the
Yeah.
other hand, there is, for example, for coaching, we have the similar problem, similar dilemma. They say that, okay, fine, Sidar, but if you were right 100%, then, for instance, Hussein Bolt would never have a coach. And technically it's correct, right? Like because Hussein Bolt's coach has not run faster than Hussein Bolt.
Right.
So he will never be able to find somebody who has accomplished his goal. But like when I answered that question, I'm saying that okay, for Usain Bolt is good, the coaching that works, and I don't have to sell coaching to Usain Bolt. But for you and I, between you and I, who would you rather prefer? If you want to become a billionaire, and I'm not a billionaire, but Bill Gates is selling a course on how to become a billionaire, whose course would you purchase?
Well, probably Bill Gates.
Yeah, well, you would not say that. Well, Sidar is like I don't think that you need the experience of becoming a billionaire, and I'm going to sign up for Sidar's course instead, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
however cheap my course is, it doesn't matter. You'll just not purchase my course.
Well, that's
So
because the experience matters, right? You want someone who's been there, who's done that.
exactly. So that's why, like in the old times, like with the life coaches, etc., these life coaches around don't have any experience with a certain area or a certain industry, and they come and they just ask you some questions. Okay, it might help with parts of your life, uh, but if you want to get some specific results, then it doesn't cut it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I want somebody, like if I'm going to become a billionaire, I want somebody who has done it to show me the ropes of how to get there, and go with me through the thick and thin. And that's the mindset of a leader as well at the same time, because leaders' greatest ability is to become a coach, but not the coach that stays on the side, because you still have a business to run. So I define that position a little bit as a coach consultant type of
Yeah.
position. So it is, you still do the work as a consultant, and you make sure that the things happen, but you also want to grow the people and coach the people, and coach consultants make the best leaders, in my opinion. What do you think, John?
No, I think you definitely have to focus on the people, and that's one of the hardships that a lot of technical leaders struggle with when they're making that transition from being like a like you mentioned, an architect or something, and moving into a leadership team lead or management role, is you struggle with that, growing the people side. And I think that is the hardest part. I wanted to talk to you a little bit though about what made you want this desire to kind of go independent and to be a coach versus just staying in a management role.
Yeah, actually, one day I was chatting on the fireside at a nice warm Christmas day. And like I was chatting with my roomie, and I knew that he was a contractor, and I knew nothing about contracting. And I was like having sort of a pity for him. He was 45, and he was contractor, and I was like the permanent person. I was thinking that he was like second class person, right? He probably doesn't earn well, etc. He doesn't get an offer to become a permanent. Like that's the kind of thing that I had in mind. And we were chatting, and I was like, I had the courage to ask him, okay, how much do you make? Like, and he said 500 euros. And I was like, wow, how can you survive on 500 euros? And then he said, it's 500 euros per day.
Hmm.
And 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 I
Well, that's
was
a
like,
lot more.
what? And I was like, what the heck? So you tell me that you are getting paid 10,000 euros, and in a year of 10 months is still like 100,000, where I'm paid something like 55,000. Is that real? Like, how can one get so much money? And I was thinking, like, I do a better job than him. Why don't I get such such money? And he told me that, Sidar, you need serious lecturing on how contracting works, and why companies hire freelancers. So I learned from him that uh, when you are creating some sort of a value, the only way to capture it is not to become somebody's employment, etc. There are multitude of ways, and I didn't know that at the time. And I started to explore that, and I made my choice clear. And I had a leader in Belgium, and he knew about my ambitions. And he said that, look, Sidar, in Belgium, we don't have so much good people as we used to have in Ireland. So, and I trust you. Would you be up for coming here and setting up a team for the bank that we have here, Fortis Bank, at that time? And I said, sure, because I knew nothing about it. If I knew something, I would probably not do it, right?
Why is
So
that? Why is that?
because there are so many hardships involved with the process, not for only for becoming an independent. It's also hard part of it, and it's risky. You have if you have a house, if you have a kid, if you have a mortgage to pay, if you are fixed on somewhere, like those decisions add up. But I was like 23, and I had even no girlfriend to live away. I had nothing, but I had a problem of visa. So Ireland was not in Schengen. And what I had to do was, like, I didn't have a working permit in Belgium, but I thought by myself, okay, Microsoft does it. Microsoft has a center in Ireland, and they are dispatching consultants to Belgium and other countries. If they are able to do it, I should be able to do it too, right? So this naive mindset, like I could do whatever Microsoft could do, got me started. And and thank God it happened. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be able to. Because I succeeded and I started earning those six-figure incomes. Without that, it wouldn't happen. And if I knew what was the consequences and hardships, I would never do that. So actually, a great motivator is sometimes the ignorance.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That sometimes we're held back by beliefs that we know, whereas if we just didn't know, we would take the risk and we would do it.
Yeah, and it is harder to, like, when you remember the first time that you have learned how to swim. You, like, they just threw you there, and you thought that you were going to drown, but you didn't, and you just get up. So without that pain and feeling of getting drowned in it, you would never learn how to swim. And then once you are at it, it is much more fluent to do the things that you are already on and doing than before starting. And that's why they say that starting is the 50% of whole process, right? Okay, I don't believe it's 50%, maybe it's 20%, but getting to 21 is easier when you are at 20 rather than when you are at 0. And getting 22 is easier when you are at 21.
Yeah, I've always thought that getting started is harder. It's like I've done a lot of running in my day, and that first mile is always the hardest. If you're going to run 6-7 miles, the first mile is always harder. Even if you're a pro, that first mile, just getting your body accustomed to breathing heavy, your heart rate getting up, and putting on the shoes to walk out the door is just as hard as running that first mile sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. And but once you are at it, like, you have to finish it. You don't have any other choice. And if you don't let yourself to have any other choice, then you finish it, and it is done. And that's a great result. And that's what happened to me. I started like reading about the subject. I started reading about the laws. I had to find an accountant. I had to set up business. I had to know how to hire people, how to delegate work, how to prepare contracts, how to find clients, right? Like, it's an important part. How to prepare a CV, how to represent that CV to others, how to nail down those interviews. I mean, if you start thinking about what goes into becoming an independent consultant, you could go easily crazy. But once you start and you make a commitment, it becomes a second nature to you. And we were talking before the call about the capturing the value, right? Like, the when we create, like, what is a good way of earning a lot of money in life? It's always we capture a part of the value that we create, right? So we never are able to, in the capitalist system, we never get compensated more than the value that we create. Nobody is going to pay you, we make off your back like 100,000 euros, but we are going to pay you 1 million. That doesn't happen, right?
Right, right.
So there are three big ways that you can go about it. One of the ways is that you can try to capture all the value that you create, or near all, let's say, without the overhead, is that you own the business and you become an entrepreneur. And that's the highest level of capturing the value that you can get. Or you can go the lowest part, that you work for somebody for a reasonable price. So to get a higher level of return for the value that you create, you try to get a promotion. You try to get some bonuses, some extra work. Okay, it's not ideal, but there's an ideal way in the middle, and that's becoming an independent consultant. So with less risk, it's not as risky as setting up the business yourself. So it's not as rewarding too, but you still get paid like significantly more, sometimes 3 times to 10 times more than an employee as an independent consultant. And that's crazy if you come to think of it. Like, I'm a very big proponent of all smart leaders to become independent consultants, because they just have to earn more of what they create. And it blows my mind why that's not the case.
Well, I think some people are just, they're afraid to make that leap, or maybe they have self doubt that maybe they're not worth what they do. I mean, I think the imposter syndrome is pretty real
Yeah.
when it comes to some people. They feel like, I know for me, when I first took took a promotion and got into management and got the raise, I kind of felt like I didn't deserve that much, maybe that much salary at first. I didn't realize that, my work is that valuable. And it took a lot of kind of self-convincing that, yeah, I am valuable. I am producing this much value for the company. And, like you said about producing value, I think, if you want to make $100,000, you can work for yourself and be worth $100,000, right? Or you can produce $200,000 worth of money for your company that's going to employ you at making $100,000.
Yeah, indeed. So the ways to increase your earnings always go through either increasing the value you create or capturing a bigger part of the value that you create,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
ideally in both.
And I always encourage my team and anybody that works for me, has ever worked for me. I've always, been an encouragement of, a side hustle or having something that they can generate income on their own. And at my last company, I managed a web and mobile development team. And I encourage, one of my employees, he actually went out and started his own SEO company, and now runs an SEO company as well. And it's like, that's a side business, but now it can turn into a full-time thing, and that's great for him because then he'll be able to, like you said, get even more money. But also when someone does that, as a leader, I encourage all leaders to do this too, because it shows that you trust your employees, for one. It allows your employees to sometimes generate a new skill or at least new perspectives that they can bring value back into your company, into what you're working on. And if you just hold them back, they're going to quit anyway, right? Because they have that desire to start their own thing or to move forward. And, it's better, I think, to, nourish that and let that grow and help you out along the way.
Yeah, indeed. And you have really stressed very important point, John, because, you know, when you see the different types of leaders in workplace, like you see some quite bad leaders and you see some adequate leaders. Like bad leaders we don't have to even talk about, but like adequate or average leaders are
Mm-hmm.
the leaders who just do the job right, and sort of like help people, or some facilitation goes on. Great leaders, they coach the people, they help what they do, and they just not only make sure that the job is done, but they also make sure that the employees and the team are happy. But there is also another category, what I call as like 1000x managers, 1000x leaders.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I call them 1000x is not only that they bring maybe much more than the 10,000 on average. not because of the output that they immediately generate, but it's also like you can only find them like 1 in 1,000 or so. Those leaders elevate the people, they elevate the whole company, they elevate, like, just because of their presence, they the whole company goes to another level. Like, and these people work like this, like this can be like technical people. You have that person, for instance, and I have met in my career two people like this, and it was an awesome experience to work with both of them. So you go into a room, if it's in a code review, they would, like, you would get out of that code review, everybody in that room would get out of that code review with a mindset shift, not with something that they learned as new, new technology, etc. With a mindset shift, you would really think about the code in a new way, more business oriented, like more results oriented, and everybody in that room that has spent that hour of code review would be elevated to a new level, and they would then go and produce at that new level. And when they would sit with another junior developer, etc., they would elevate that person to a new level. You
Yeah, no,
see the
I think.
cascading effect that it creates.
No, I
Yeah,
think you're absolutely right. I think that's one of the advantages of keeping those people on your team is to grow. It helps grow those people around them, right? Every 1,000x leader, as you call them, they're going to be more than just their own impact. They're going to impact those around them, and you see that like in sports too. If you look at basketball, you'll have like a superstar. When they go to a team, they make those around them better, and the people around them score more. They play better because there's
yeah.
someone at that extra level on their team.
Yeah, like in Europe, we are football fans, and my team in the year 2000, my team in Turkey was a legendary team. We won the European Cup a couple of times. So, like, we had this great footballer called George Hagi. He's a Romanian player. He came and he just made the team champion. He was not running, or he didn't do anything like that's out of the football's rules, etc. you know but he changed the team's air, like the way that you have mentioned, so much, so profound, that even one generation, two generations after him, people were still impacted by the goals that he has set, the level that he has set, the example that he has set. So we still, after 20 years, we are still talking about him. And that's why he's a 1,000x leader. He created results for an organization, which is a football team in this case, for years to come. Not only he didn't, for example, just teach on how to kick a ball and then one guy has learned it and that's about it. He made such a shift mindset shift, sorry, mindset shift that enabled the transformation of a whole organization. Now we are not that small team anymore who doesn't think about the winning the big cups, etc. We are
Right.
not thinking of ourselves as the second league. We all have much bigger goals thanks to George Haji and his 1,000x leadership.
So, what advice do you have for someone who, let's say, they're a software engineer or a team lead, and they're interested in getting into this independent consulting or coaching work? What advice do you have for them of making that shift, or how do they learn the prospects or the aspect of doing something like that? Because it's different than just teaching someone what you know. You mentioned earlier, kind of like how to go out and find business. How do you follow up with people? How do you do all those things? What was the way that someone makes that shift?
Yeah, indeed. So the shift is indeed the right word, because most of the time with smart software developers, engineers, or or managers, the amount of work that they do or the skills that they possess is enough. They don't need to learn like big things, etc. And then they know it as well. Like you probably have also noticed, like the consultants that are coming are not necessarily more knowledgeable than you, or they are not possessing like new skills, etc. It's just the way they are earning more and you are not, and that's 80-90% of the case. Of course there's a 10% of the case that's different, but over the years I have worked with a lot of project managers, software engineers, architects, etc. And I have come with the 5 steps, and I have also become independent myself, of course, but I don't recommend my way to anybody because it was like hitting your head to every possible wall to see that if you can knock them off or not. um, so I have developed a 5 steps system to make sure that the impact is big, but at the same time the costs are low for you. So the first step is the mindset shift. So without the mindset shifts and thinking like an independent consultant, all the other steps fail. So you can think of it as like Hanoi Towers. Like you have a big base in the beginning, and that big base, you have to put it first, and that's mindset shift. If you put the other ones, you are not going to be able to put the base afterwards, or you are not going to be able to complete it afterwards. Mm-hmm. So the second level is to determine where you want to be, your to be, and where you are, your as-is. Mm-hmm. This is a technique that we use also in the enterprise architecture and IT digital transformation, but it applies very well to a personal development case. Not only for becoming an independent, this can be used for anything, right? Like you define your to be, you make your future SWOT analysis. In an amazing situation that I become independent and I am able to get clients and tripled my knowledge, etc. What have I done correctly to get there? What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of that successful person in the future? And then you ask the same questions to your current self, and then you make a bridge. For instance, like for that, I need to have a cloud certificate because that person will sell to the clients the cloud expertise. Okay, that means that I have to get that cloud certificate because it's a gap between my future self and the current self, right? And these are the 2 steps. It's very common, but the thing that's lacking in a lot of smart people's plans are the roadmap in between. So we have to divide it into measurable chunks. Okay, like this 2 weeks I'm going to read the material, the second 2 weeks I'm going to solve the tests, etc., and the last 2 weeks I'm going to get the exam and get it done, etc. So building these measurable blocks and milestones to go from the as-is and to be is the second step. So you have your base, your mindset ready. You have learned how an independent consultant thinks, and now you have prepared your roadmap. You have defined your to be and as-is, and the third step then becomes testing. So this is a familiar term for the software developers out there, like the TDD, test-driven design. So I'm a very big fan of testing everything before going to real life, right? So if you are going to have your resume ready, you have to know that for sure that it's going to work before you take any big steps and set up companies, etc. Right? So you prepare a smaller version of your stellar CV. That's what the type of CV that I call the CV that gets clients. you set up a smaller version of your network, you test your current network, you send them messages, you connect with the people that you wanted to connect from the past, you look at some of the job descriptions and see and apply to even some of them to test your CV, to test your network, not at a big scale, but a learning experience type of thing, right? And then you learn from them, and then you make your CV better. You learn how to network better. Okay, I should go to this type of events to increase my chances of landing more clients, and put it into your roadmap, right?
Right.
And then the other step, the next step would be really getting the clients. So you have to prepare. Now you have tested everything, you have put the basis in place, and you have your roadmap, and you are gonna need to build your stellar CV, which is a lot of it needs a lot of thought on itself as well. But finding clients is an overrated step, actually. Like a lot of, like, when you really set out the other steps, like the 1, 2, 3, the fourth step comes automatically on its own. And it is difficult to think about it when you are starting, because that's the ultimate end point in our heads, right? So when you are thinking about I want to become an independent, the first question that, or the first objection that comes to your mind is that I'm never going to be able to find clients.
Right.
Correct?
So yeah, because you've never done it before.
Yeah, because you have never done it before, indeed. But you also didn't get a job before you have got a job, but you got it, right? So it means that somebody out there is doing it, and they are doing it very great, and so you can do it too. And the structure that you follow is really as analytical as you do software development. So once you have your tests and you have the ball rolling, you start to see more job ads. You adjust your CV, you apply to those ads, and you network smartly. You connect with the right recruiters in your area. You go to the right events, and you see what an ideal your version of yourself gets in terms of the contracts, and that's your to be, right? And that setting up your to be is very simple now, because you can just go to any job site, look for the contracts, and see what is really on demand nowadays, and you can then set it as your to be and then work your way there. And when you reach there, you just have already found some clients, because people are looking for those skills, right? So finding clients become much more easier. But of course, it is a similar way from what we have just told. Like when you are at 20%, getting to 21 is easier, but from the beginning, it looks very, very far. And it applies the same as finding a client when you have nothing looks much more difficult than when you have done all these steps and you have tested your CV, you have tested your network, and you are in the middle of the process. It becomes much, much, much more easier. And the best independent consultants really understand why companies are hiring independent consultants. And that's key, really, because when I started, nobody told me about this. I didn't understand, as you have heard the story. I was thinking that, like, these companies are crazy, that they are paying so much money, that they are paying more than an employee. And yeah, I mean, why would they ever do that? But then I was able to understand the dynamics of a project. I have understood that sometimes you need specific skills in a specific time-bound processes and projects. You need somebody quickly. It's easier to fire independent consultants, right? So understanding those dynamics help you a lot in your journey to become an independent consultant. And the last step is, of course, like setting up your machinery, right? Like you need your company, you have your lawyers and accountants and the systems that you have to run, like you have to put in place for once, and then it will run for you forever.
Right, like
And
setting up automation and things like that.
yeah, indeed, the automation and etc. So these 5 steps like worked very well for my clients and worked very well for me up to now as well. But there is like a sixth step which really encompasses the whole steps, and that's like after you have become a successful independent consultant, how do you keep your success? How
Mm-hmm.
do you stay successful? And that's uber important as well, because that makes all these steps recurring steps. You have to still again adapt your mindset. You have to update your roadmaps. You have to test time and again your CV, your network. You have to increase it. You have to nourish it, right? It is not a one-off process. And yeah, you have to find more clients as well. So it's not like one-off thing that you can fire and forget, but then it becomes a joy because you are making 3 times, 4 times more money. You are debt free, and the life becomes sorry, an absolute joy when you are able to reach your dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how can people find out more about this process and learn more about you and the things that you're working on?
Well, yeah, they can follow me on social media on my name and surname Sidar Ok. Twitter.com/Sidar Ok is a good place. I also share a lot of what I do. We have an exclusive group for tech leaders, um, and that's called techleadersunited.com. It's a
Mm-hmm.
free Facebook group that only like high caliber tech leaders get in, and we share wisdom from between each other, and all the people who were interested in what they were hearing here and more can come there and support each other with their career decisions. We have people from all over the world, and it would be a great way to start conversation.
All right, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and list that up and link to all those up in the show notes as well, so that people can find you there. Thanks for coming on the show. Any last tips or pieces of advice you want to offer to upcoming leaders?
Yes, so if they focus on the value they provide, they will never fail. That's
Hmm.
the last. That's the biggest advice that I can give.
Excellent. That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, John.
If you've enjoyed this episode or any episode of A Geek Leader, please head on over to iTunes, leave me a review, and also share this on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you share stuff. It would be greatly appreciated. And once again, I want to thank our sponsors, Splashtop. Users from LogMeIn and TeamViewer have been leaving and defecting over to Splashtop as their preferred remote access and support software. Splashtop is fast, it is secure, it is competitively priced, and you can learn more and get 20% off for all Geek Leader listeners at geekleader.com/splashtop.